Leaders of the G20, meanwhile, have reportedly agreed to grant the African Union equal membership status to the European Union, signaling an expansion of the organization's membership during the upcoming summit. Alisa Torres has the details.
Leaders of the G20, a group comprising advanced economies, unanimously agreed to grant the African Union permanent membership status, putting it on par with the European Union within the organization. Various media reports say that the move to grant membership to the African Union garnered support from key nations, including Russia and Senegal, whose President Macky Sall, former African Union chair, argued that it rectifies an injustice. African nations collectively hold the 8th position in global GDP. However, Eba Kalondo, spokesperson for African Union Commission Chairman Moussa Faki, said the bloc has not yet received an invitation to the G20 summit. To recall, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who currently holds the G20 presidency, expressed that he wants AU to become a G20 member, which currently holds only one African country, that is South Africa. G20's move follows the expansion of the BRICS economic group of countries following a summit of the bloc held in Johannesburg last month. Reporting this has been Alisa Torres, SMNI News.
The ASEAN summit has recently concluded, and among the top leaders invited to this event is India's Prime Minister. He conveyed that the 21st century is a century of Asia and reiterated his support for the region. Andres Santos tells us more.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the 20th ASEAN-India Summit hosted by Indonesia, wherein he emphasized the significance of the bloc and India's East policy, as well as its critical role in the Indo-Pacific Initiative. Modi said, quote, "The ASEAN group stands as the epicenter of growth in ASEAN affairs, valuing the inclusion of all voices. ASEAN has played a significant role in global development, reflecting the ideals of unity, shared destiny, and a common future. As we assume the Indian G20 presidency, we recognize that the 21st century is the century of Asia." The Indian Prime Minister also reiterated his country's strong support for ASEAN and highlighted the resilience of their cooperation in various sectors. Meanwhile, Indonesian President Joko Widodo said that while the cooperation between ASEAN and India has not yet yielded any substantial benefits for the people, it was important to enhance this partnership, particularly given the immense potential of the Indian Ocean. Widodo pointed out that the Indian Ocean's vast expanse connects 33 countries with a combined population of 2.9 billion people and contributes to 1/5 of the global GDP by 2025. The 43rd ASEAN Summit in Indonesia, the current chair of the ASEAN this year, includes leaders from Southeast Asian countries as well as non-ASEAN partners, which took place from September 5 to 7. Reporting, this is Andrea Santos, SMNI News.
Foreign diplomats are banned from visiting Solomon Islands starting next week. To find out why, Sheena Selim will tell us more.
Effective on Friday, September 15, the Solomon Islands will not welcome visits from any foreign ambassadors as local officials prepare to finalize the national budget. The decree will take effect 2 months from September 15. The letter was addressed to all development partners but did not name any specific country. The Solomon Islands has seen an increase in visits by senior diplomats from Australia, the United States, Britain, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and China. Foreign ambassadors flocked to the country after the small island nation signed a security pact with Beijing last year. Washington and Canberra have expressed concerns over the security pact signed between the Solomon Islands and China. But the island nation slammed the criticisms and signed 9 more agreements and memorandums with China in July. Reporting from New South Wales, this is Sheena Selim, SMNI News, Australia.
The Philippines is getting ready to welcome the Prime Minister of Australia on his anticipated visit to the country on Friday, September 8th. Sasha Haza reports.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese interacted with 3 Asian countries for this week alone. His 3-nation trip includes a bilateral visit to the Philippines on Friday as Canberra strives to foster diplomatic ties with regional partners. Albanese's 3-nation tour started in Jakarta on Wednesday for the 43rd ASEAN Summit and related meetings. It will be followed by a trip to the Philippines on Friday, where he is expected to meet President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to discuss how the two countries can strengthen cooperation on defense and maritime security. The visit will make Albanese the first Australian Prime Minister to visit the Philippines in the past 20 years. From the Philippines, the Australian leader will travel to India to attend a two-day G20 summit this weekend. Albanese also confirmed his plan to visit China later this year after talks with the Chinese premier on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. Reporting from Sydney, this has been Sasha Hassa, SM9 News, Australia.
The Philippines and Vietnam are eyeing a 5-year rice cooperation deal that would ensure food security in the country. MJ Mondeja reports from Jakarta, Indonesia.
Haba po kami ay nasa Jakarta, ay walang tigil po ang aming pagtutok sa sitwasyon na ngayon na ating hinaharap tungkol sa bigas.
This is the issue that the president was grappling before attending the 43rd ASEAN Summit in Jakarta, the high cost of rice due to uncertain supply. Upon returning from the summit, the supply of rice was immediately on his agenda. Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh and President Marcos held a bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit as both countries are close to finalizing a rice trade cooperation deal that would ensure rice imports from Vietnam for 5 years.
We look forward to having stable framework of cooperation of rice trade for a long period of at least 5 years.
In the Philippines, we have put the frontier sector as a priority in our economic planning and transformation on agriculture, especially with the interface of what we are anticipating in terms of the El Nino and the drought that it brings.
In 2008, the Philippines and Vietnam signed a memorandum of agreement to import 1.5 million metric tons of Vietnamese rice from 2008 to 2010. However, this was affected by the rice tariffication law in 2019, and rice imports from Vietnam did not materialize. Vietnam is one of the top rice-producing countries globally, with 4.84 million metric tons of rice exports from January to July of this year, valued at $2.58 billion. In the first 5 months of this year, the Philippines imported nearly 1.5 million metric tons of rice from Vietnam, accounting for almost half of Vietnam's rice exports during the period. Once the multi-year deal is finalized, the government expects rice prices in the country to stabilize. The president also had a message for the Prime Minister of Vietnam.
We hope that we can find an agreement so that there will be an exchange in terms of all of that.
In addition to the rice deal, Vietnam and the Philippines are also finalizing agreements on maritime cooperation and the both welfare of fishermen from both countries. Apart from Vietnam, President Marcos also discussed rice during a bilateral meeting with Cambodia's Prime Minister. This month, the private sector imported 2,500 metric tons of Cambodian rice into the country.
My administration will continue to ensure that our constructive engagements with ASEAN, our dialogue partners, and stakeholders serve our national interests and the well-being of the Filipino people.
President Marcos has once said that he will lift immediately the price cap in rice supply once the supply normalizes. For Ganamabulog, Philippines, I'm Jem Ondihar. SM9 News.
Various community Filipinos in Japan thank Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy as well as SM9 and the Keepers Club International for its significant contribution to nation building. Shun Matsui reports.
With its positive contribution to the community, SM9 and the Keepers Club International, both founded by Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy, was invited in an exhibition game where they received recognition and acknowledgement by the Filipino community. On its 7th season, the Aguilar's Basketball League, the D-League, invited SM9 Japan News Bureau and Keepers Club International Japan Chapter to an intense yet friendly exhibition game. The D-League is an annual one-day basketball event composed of teams constructed by the Filipino communities in Japan.
Kaya po ginawa ko itong isang event na to at para maging kaisa-isa ang lahat ng OFW at Filipino community dito sa Osaka.
Also in attendance is Welfare Officer MWO OWA Osaka Miss Pilipina C. Dino to support the event as well to promote and spread MWO's goal in helping the Filipino community.
Sana po ipagpatuloy ninyo. Alam ko po na ito ay isa sa way ninyo para maalis yung boredom. No? At magkaroon pa ng mas malawak na komunikasyon, koordinasyon sa mga kapwa Pilipino dito sa Japan. So sana hindi po malimit lang yung inyong mga samahan sa mga permanent resident na dito, bagkus isali po natin yung ating mga manggagawa na pansamantalang nagtatrabaho dito.
The Filipino communities expressed their gratitude with a plaque of recognition and awarded SMNI for being a trustworthy news agency and its contribution to nation building. They also recognized the Keepers Club International for helping the youth by guiding them to become productive citizens of society. The Filipino communities in Japan thank Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy for SMNI and Keepers Club International, which he founded due to his great love not only in the Philippines and Filipino communities in Japan, but also in other countries across the world.
Salamat po sa SMNI yan na namomonitor po namin. Kayo ay talagang aktibong tumutulong at sumusubaybay sa ating mga Filipino, hindi lang Filipino workers, Filipino community dito sa Japan. Salamat.
Salamat po, Pastor Kibuloy! Mabuhay!
For God and my beloved country, Nihon kara hokoku itashimashita. SMNI News, Japan.